Welcome everyone to this third online event from Artelize. I'm Paola Cacciatori, co-founder of Artelize. I'm so glad you joined us today for this webinar. As many of you know, we started in January a very important conversation about rethinking audience engagement. And we hosted a panel where, for example, Aubrey also was participating. And we gathered over 360 arts organizations worldwide. This is obviously proving that audience engagement is a very hot topic in our industry. And that's why it's so dear to Artelize. Today, we are focusing on audience retention and most importantly, how to make sure that that audience comes back. We have an incredible lineup of industry experts with us, and they're here to give you practical insights that you can really put to use right away. So I would like to mention two silent members of the staff, Ines and Isabel. They will help me gather your questions and comments in the chat. So feel free to intervene whenever you feel like, and we will make sure to filter and select most of the relevant question that you will send us. Don't be disappointed if we don't answer all the questions. Of course, we have a bit of a time restraint, so we will make sure to follow up afterwards with all the other questions. But now I would like to introduce the great speakers of this webinar. I'll begin with Aubrey. Aubrey, you're always the first in these events. I don't know why, that's how it is. Welcome.
Alphabetical, yeah.
So, Aubrey, you're the founder and the CEO of Changing the Narrative, and you've been dubbed as the Steve Jobs of classical music. And this is because you basically revolutionized the performing arts industry with your customer-centric approach, and also because of your data-driven strategies. So we're super excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Then a warm welcome to David Taylor. David, Forbes 30 Under 30 Europe honoree and a pioneering entrepreneur in classical music. So, David, you're the founder of the Yorkshire Young Sinfonia, the first fully digital youth orchestra. And you've been instrumental, and here the pun is intended because you're also a cellist, I know that, in empowering arts professionals worldwide. It's amazing to have you. So thank you for joining us as well, David.
Thank you. It's great to be here and great to see everyone else who's joined the session as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing session, right? And I'm so thrilled to welcome Sune Järhilda, co-founder and CEO of Artelize. Sune, welcome. I must say you are the embodiment of the data-driven, data genius tenor, really, because you moved from a celebrated operatic career to tech entrepreneurship. And now you're bringing your passion for AI data to the performing arts world, which is also super dear to your heart. Welcome, Sune.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
Last but not least, the man that I call the man of magic, Jan Pilgo-Carlsen, head of product and co-founder of Artelize. He's absolutely amazing, and with over 15 years of experience in IT and tech, now you are finally dedicated to transforming audience engagement through data and technology magic.
Thank you, Paola. So excited to talk about this today.
Yep. Absolutely. Let's kick things off proactively. And for this, I will actually like to launch a little poll that we have prepared. So the first poll is about adopting a data-driven strategy. Is this a struggle in your arts organization? Again, adopting a data-driven strategy, is that a struggle? So as you can see, we have sort of a tie between yes and more or less. Very interesting. This helps me introduce the first topic. So we're going to focus on common mistakes that are blocking engagement. And when we talk to arts organization, Aubrey, they tell us really that they find it difficult to analyze data and also to embrace change. This because I know you have written an article about that, beautiful, by the way. And this is exactly because it can be hard to modify existing workflows or processes, right? So what's your experience on this?
Yeah, I think anybody who feels like it's hard or it's overwhelming, I think that's a really understandable feeling. I think, we live now in a data saturated world. And so for that to feel overwhelming, I think makes a lot of sense. But I have two tips that I wanted to share for anybody who is feeling that way or trying to make that shift to become more data-driven, data-focused. The first is, I say this all the time, the best data is the data you've got. And so that means no matter where you are, like you have something available to you, and it doesn't matter the size of your organization or how long you've been in business, like we all have some sort of data available to us already. And that's the starting point, is what we already have. And I think that's good news that we get to start wherever we're at. Some people think like we got to go 0 to 100, and that's not what I'm saying. And that's not what the research says about change either. The research says any kind of change management is about taking little steps at a time. And it's actually little steps that really do add up to big impact. So, okay, so start with what you got. That's point one. The dashboard we're going to see later definitely helps make sense of wherever we're at and what we've got. So that's coming. But the second tip I want to share right now is the best data starts with a question. And, the questions could be, for example, we know the industry statistic for first-time buyers is that up to 90% of those first-time buyers never come back, 90% churn rate of our first-timers. So then the question from that for an organization could become, what is our first-time buyer churn rate? How do we stack up against what we're seeing sort of industry-wide? So that's an example of once you have the question, then you can reverse engineer it to try to get the data to answer that question. Another example, is our first year subscriber renewal rate different than our second year or third year plus? Hint, it probably is. Usually first timers have a much higher turnover or non-renewal rate. So even just those kind of questions, if that's what you're thinking, then being able to then say, okay, yeah, how do we pull the data that's the answer to that question, rather than trying to just, get all the data from all the places. I feel like I see that a lot sometimes, and then that leads back to the overwhelm feeling. So anyways, all to say is that when you start answering the questions, then you can start making a plan to influence that KPI, influence that key performance indicator metric. What can we do to invite first timers to come back? What can we do to help our first year subscribers understand the benefits in renewing and not just churn, and then we got to start at ground zero, that kind of things. Anyways, hopefully those two tips help a little bit.
I think that's extremely important, what you just mentioned, this idea of baby steps rather than, hey, we go full on. That's very important. And I would like to ask something to David. So David, in your book, The Future of Classical Music, Part 2, because it's your second book, you mentioned the need of, I quote, adapt or die. So that is pretty drastic, but also it is actually highlighting the challenges that the industry is facing right now. So what are some obstacles that you see arts organizations are making that, block audience engagement?
Very good question. And I think the adapt or die thing comes from an acknowledgement of just how revolutionary a time we're living in. So I think to a certain extent, we should be quite compassionate to ourselves that we're finding it hard because these are unprecedented times with an incredible rate of change, and as an industry, we're not really prepared for that historically and systemically. So it is going to be difficult, full stop, for everyone to go forwards with this. But by being static, it's a difficult place to be, and we have to move forwards. In terms of some of the common mistakes, I think the main one, I think, is that when we communicate with our audience, whether it is in the concert hall, our promotional materials, social media, emails, etc., we tend to tell our audience what we want them to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear from us or what they might be interested in. It's almost like a blanket marketing approach of, here's some stuff, do you want it? And I think one of the benefits of this digital age is we now can really understand our audience, even if it is from just asking them questions, but in essence, make sure that when we do communicate, it is something that they genuinely might want to hear rather than being bombarded by something they're not. And especially if we do keep sending them messages like, do you want this thing? And it's the wrong product or concept type for them, they're going to unsubscribe, unfollow, not listen, ignore all the time. It just becomes annoying spam marketing. So I think now we have tools and information, we can be really courageous in how we communicate with them and try and communicate in a way that is meaningful. And the good news is that doesn't really have to cost significant amounts of money anymore. So for me, I think that's the main one, that we find these opportunities to communicate what is actually going to be of interest to our customers rather than the other way around of what is interesting for us to tell them.
That's an extremely good point. We always often overlook this kind of things, but sometimes, as we say, the devil is in the details, right? Aubrey, I don't know if you have a comment perhaps on this.
Just to agree, because I love everything David says always. I don't think I have much more to add to it to say that, I mean, adapt or die is like, I'm sure strategically chosen to be like provocative, and that's true. And I agree with that. But also that in some ways, I think that is the reality we're faced with, is like the task before us is to be data driven in our work, I think.
Absolutely. And then it's time for another little poll. So just to see where we are at when it comes to audience retention. So the question is, actually, it's not a question, it's just a statement, but I know how many first-time buyers return within 12 months in my arts organization. So I know them, yes, no, I wish I knew it. Okay, I'm gonna end it and share the results with you. I wish I knew it is what wins. And then a good amount of yes, which is very promising and very refreshing, I would say. But this actually helps me introduce the second topic. So why retention metrics matters. And Aubrey, I'm sorry, I'm still starting with you. It's like you're the starter tonight. I'm sorry. But anyway, based on your experience, of course, working with arts organizations all over the world, what do you believe are the key data points when it comes to analyzing retention?
Yeah, I think the key data points are just where we left off on this poll: first-time buyer retention. Now, first-time buyers are not our biggest segment in our database. That's usually the case. So why do I think that matters so much? It's because first-time buyers are the inflection point from which all other relationships develop. So if we don't get first-time buyers to come back, we have virtually zero chance of getting them to eventually become repeat buyers, subscribers, donors, all those other more lucrative things that we do care about so much. And so I just want to underscore that, not necessarily the largest segment, but in my eyes, at least, the most important, because it really is that entry point from which all those other relationships develop. And TRG has a great stat on, like, if we can just get a first-time buyer to come back within 12 months of their first visit, so that exact question we just looked at on the poll, then their lifetime value skyrockets, which is just another way of saying the same things I'm saying, that one just inflection point, I keep coming back to that word, it's so critical for retaining that relationship over the lifetime of the patron. Another very important inflection point is first year subscribers. And so first year, I alluded to this earlier, but first year subscribers typically have a much lower renewal rate than everybody else. So what tends to happen is that organizations kind of lump all their renewal data together. What's your renewal rate? We have a 70% subscriber renewal rate, or whatever the number is. And that's fine as a generalization, but I really encourage organizations to split out your first time subscribers versus everybody else, because the national stat on that is that about half of first year subscribers don't renew. So we've worked so hard to get people to subscribe, and then half of them are leaving and not coming back. So that's the other data or kind of segment that I would say is super important, data point that's super important. So just even if you're not breaking out your subscribers at all, definitely first years from everybody else. If you're already doing some of that, then I would look at second year subscribers versus third year. And what usually happens is that by the time we've got somebody in for 3 years or longer, but especially that 3-year mark as a subscriber, they're in. Like at that point, those subscriber renewal rates are like what we want to see, 85%, 90%, like really, really, like they're loyal at that point. So, okay. And then one more to share right now is same song, different verse with your donors. What's the first year donor renewal rate versus everybody else? And the national stat on this is 81% of first year donors don't renew. It's so terrible for us, especially in the US, where we rely on philanthropic donations and contributions so much for our business model. To have 81% not renew, that comes straight from AFP, Association of Fundraising Professionals. And so, but it also presents an opportunity. So I don't want to just be doom and gloom, but for us to start looking at what is that first year donor renewal rate versus everybody else. It's just yet another key inflection point. If we get that donor, it does not matter if they're a $20 donor, a $200 donor, a $2,000 donor, or you name it. If we get that gift renewed, that lifetime value goes up so much. So even if we just start tackling those 3 retention stats, those are the segments to answer the question. I recommend first-time buyers, first-year subscribers, first-year donors. For anybody who's not doing this work, start with those 3. And if you start tackling any of those, like, you will generate more revenue. And there's a whole other tangent I could go on how it helps with budgeting precision too. So if anybody wants to talk about that, I guess put it in the chat and we can get back to that. But you just will. You start improving retention. I say it all the time now. It's like compound interest. Like, it gets easier, it gets better, it gets more lucrative. Like, these are all things we want for our institutions for sure.
Brilliant. And I love also how you mentioned the amount of donations. It doesn't have to be big. It's as long as you massage consistently. So, and now, of course, David, you're my second. But not because it's less, obviously. So yeah, I have actually an interesting question. It's not because of a mere comparison, but what are the differences between embracing a data-driven approach between the United States and UK, Europe? I know you work with all kinds of arts organizations, and I know you have some good insights on that.
I think with this, there's probably more that unites us than probably separates us in this regard. I think the only slight difference would be in terms of the funding available to help you with the tools to do this. And one potential slight frustration from the European side is that when it comes to digital funding, a lot of it tends to be around projects that involve digital things like a concert with technology, rather than necessarily about how can we give you tools in your back office, which is potentially might sort of tie your hands a little bit in some scenarios to actually get going with this. Whereas in the United States, there might be a slight element more flexibility in how you're able to spend money if it's more through philanthropic donations, but equally then some of those might be specific for things. So in essence, it's confusing all round. But I think with it, I was talking with an organization last month, and the marketing team there, one thing they fed back is that they were terrified of making mistakes. And as a result, they had sort of like decision paralysis coming from this and weren't wanting to do anything on the fear that if they did something and adopted a tool, it would go wrong and that would be a waste of money and they'd get in trouble and lots of things there. And when we are all struggling for various reasons, wherever we are in the world, I think that fear is very real and it's going to be very impactful on how we make our decisions. So with it, I think one thing that is reassuring is the tools we have available now are much cheaper than they were 5, 10, 20 years ago, whether that is through acquiring data, whether it is through creating digital content, all these things in consumer technology is a lot more powerful and a lot cheaper than it used to be. And I think having a mentality of curiosity might be a real positive going forwards, and that it's okay to try things, test, learn, and I don't want to say the word fail, but if things don't work out, it's been a positive experience. And that I don't think is a culture that is really widespread throughout our sector on a global scale. So, and I think that's the same for both sides of the Atlantic for it. But I do also think there's now a greater curiosity when it comes to these digital tools coming forwards. And all of a sudden we are very aware of the power of all of this, particularly post-pandemic. And that idea going forward, I think, is something that's very powerful. So that's also potentially me sitting on the fence and saying there isn't any real differences. But I think this idea that we're probably all in the same boat on this might actually be quite a solace to many organisations that it is the same all round, and therefore we can learn from each other on a global scale with this.
Absolutely. And there is a comment from one of our participants. Paralysis through paralysis through analysis. You have
I have a little thing that segues
Absolutely.
and ties Aubrey's and David's comments. I think Aubrey has seen this before, but we made a little bit of research into lifetime values of arts organizations. I would just want to share my screen very briefly. Can you see this graph? Yes, cool. So we actually analyzed the data, and this is unrelated to what technology you're using. That has nothing to do with that. This is talking the case for why you should work with these retention rates. So Aubrey, you just mentioned lifetime values, and because there's such a, if I get a first timer today, they are on average in the US market worth $198. And you could say, but they only buy a ticket at $50. It's because some of them do come back, and with you doing what you do today, some of them do become a multi-ticket buyer. Some of them do get a subscription, and you might get the next Warren Buffett as your first timer with, and he keeps donating until he's a major donor. So that is what happens already. So this means that when you're able to move a first timer to a multi-ticket buyer, you are 7xing, or you are 7-doubling the value of that customer. And that means that you can see, so when you sit and look at your budgeting and your planning, if you can argue, we can probably get 10 10 new multi-ticket buyers, then you just made $15,000 in value for your organization. And that, I think, is the cool thing about also what, sorry, I will stop sharing because I can't see anyone while I do it. It's very alone, a feeling of loneliness that I don't like. No, it also connects well to what you're saying, David, that at least we do have the long lights on in performing arts. So we can actually sit and look at the world like this. We don't have to be like a commercial operation in the sense that if it doesn't pay back next year, it's failed. We can actually look at the lifetime value and work very consistently on improving it all the time. And that's maybe where we are different than the businesses. And you know, Aubrey, when you say run it like a business, we actually have the advantage that we can be a little more holistic still while running it as a business, because we have that donor leg and we have other things to stand on. And, you know, the non-profit model also has benefits. It's not only a struggle. So I just wanted to share that, because it's actually lifetime value can sometimes be a little abstract because it's statistics in its essence, but it's actually, you know, and if you get them to be a first-time subscriber, you have $4,500 extra to work with your programming and hiring better artists, increasing your orchestra, doing more cool digital stuff, etc. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in the mix here.
Really. Thank you so much, Jan. That was extremely valuable. And I think also visually to really get a sense of what that means, it's super important. And the next topic is actually interesting. It's a very brand new thing here that we're discussing. And Aubrey, no, I'm not going to ask you the first question this time. It's about community of audience growth hackers. So soon, back in January, you did talk about audience growth hacking as a concept, especially in our panel. And then you sort of elaborated this concept further on, and you really envisioned a community of audience growth hackers. So can you tell more about that?
Yes, it's a concept that we stole directly from our own world, from technology and Silicon Valley, where growth hacking is a discipline that all tech startups need to embrace, and it's second nature. They also say in Silicon Valley, fail fast. So a comment to that company before, who was afraid of actually doing experiments and doing stuff that might be wrong. I think that comes from being in this artistic world. As an opera singer, it's a zero error culture, basically. We don't like to crack on the high C on stage. But in this case, I think failing fast actually just means that you are bold enough to make experiments and learn from them fast. And the only way to learn from it also in tech is to know your data. Get the feedback, so you know if your action was a success or a failure, something that you should double down on or stop doing. And that's basically what growth hacking is. So then back, the next thought is, okay, we are an industry who is in need of change, in need of new ways to get our audience back and to retain our audience and make sure we have a long and lasting future for our beautiful art forms here. And what would be better than to actually share best practices? And I know that sounds so simple. So I go out there and say, hey, I made this amazing experiment. I have the data to support it. And then we go all to maybe to a conference and share that information. We buy the ticket, the plane ticket. We go to some distant city and we spend a whole day or two sharing this information. That's how it happens today. I know there are fantastic communities out there who share information, but it's extremely cumbersome. So I envision something also, again, driven by tech. What if we had a forum where we both could gather this information and get the feedback and share at the same time? And I thought, of course, the Artelize platform was the perfect place to to experiment with that. The whole idea, of course, is to look at the numbers and look at all the actions you could that we see out there, and then simply share the best of them, so we can all learn from it, so we can all grow, because we will not be able to handle this crisis on our own if we are just little islands doing our own thing. We really need to find better ways and more effective ways to share the best practices and double down on everything that works. And if it's driven by data and by consistency, then we are better off.
Wow, that's a really new concept. I think it's so important, right? It seems like it's so needed because, as you said, for all the rest, we do already have communities. And this actually leads me to ask David. I know you also feel strongly about the power of community, right? And so could you tell us a little bit of your own thoughts about the importance of building a community for arts organization professional as a support system, really? And also, now that we have that technology that you mentioned, quite available and cheap, maybe we really can create a solid system to advance and just to take the courage all together to do this.
Definitely. One thing I've been quite fascinated by on my journey from speaking to people from different organizations is that usually the change maker in the organization or the person within the marketing team can sometimes feel very isolated in what they're doing, whether it is that the decision makers above them are not adopting their ideas, or there's challenges with digital illiteracy, and therefore they feel like the only person trying to drive forward with this. There was someone I was speaking to, or I connected with in the pandemic, who became very excited because, thanks to the pandemic, small silver lining to a horrible time, we're now much more used to doing video calls and connecting in different places. And so all of a sudden, this individual who was on their own, all of a sudden had a community of people around the world with similar thoughts and similar journeys, which means we're able to support each other through this. And I think we're in quite a unique situation because, unlike other businesses or organizations, most of the time we're not going to be in competition with each other. Like putting on a concert in San Francisco is going to be totally unaffected by me putting on a concert in London. So we can share best learning and best practice, and I think it's in everyone's benefit for doing this. So this is, I think, probably a nice change compared to other industries where they are having to compete in the online space and keeping on to their precious bits of advice and wisdom. I think in essence we might all be solving some of the same problems or different problems, but the ones that other people will face at different times. And by sharing that, we might be able to have a greater pool of knowledge within our industry than we might be able to do individually or even within our own country's industries as well. So for me, I think this is quite an exciting time where we can come together, support each other, learn from each other, and also feel that we're not the only person having to go through this, because regardless of the scale of organization, I know that level of isolation is very real for many in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just unmute Aubrey. Yes, because the next question is for you. Aubrey, we had many questions, about sharing best practices regarding retention. So going a little bit back for that, but exactly in line with the need for a community. How do the others do, right? So could you provide some example of a retention success stories? So use cases, literally, that you came across.
Yeah, I've got several. So I'll talk about three just because they're different budget sizes. So hopefully you can see what feels most relatable to you. But I've got several on my website, on my blog. So just know that's there. If you want, I can pull up the URL in a moment. But just to list them out right now. One great success story. This is a regional orchestra, Fort Collins Symphony. They did a lot of things in terms of patron attention. They were an early adopter of the Artelize dashboard to help them get organized about their data. Long story short, through these tactics we're talking about today, they increased their revenue by $15,000 per concert. And so they went from, everybody's working on their pandemic recovery and getting audiences back. Last season, every concert was sold out or 90-something% sold, almost sold out. So they really are a good one. Again, that's regional orchestra. Okay, here's a major orchestra example. Queensland Symphony, we worked together and they were doing some really interesting things with user experience research. So kind of tangential to what we're talking about now, but really trying to focus on that first timer experience to get those people to come back. And what large institutions have in their favor is scale. Whereas, at a big institution, if you start changing some of these metrics by like 2%, if we increase our first time buyer retention rate just by 2%, that's actually a lot of money that comes from that. Whereas at a smaller organization, like $15,000 a concert with Fort Collins, like the percentages are much higher in terms of retention to achieve that revenue. So I just want to point that out. Big institutions, what you have in your favor is scale. So one other organization I wanted to mention is Flagstaff Symphony, so a community orchestra. They started working on retention and they said, we are such a small organization. We know that about ourselves. The only thing we're going to do is work on first-time buyer retention. And they ended up so first of all, mad respect that they were like, this is the one thing we're going to focus on. So talk about baby steps. They were like, this is our baby step. Okay. They increased their first-time buyer retention from 10%. You already heard me say the national average is 90% don't come back. That means 10% are the ones who do. And they were falling right in line with that statistic when they began. And so they started with that question, how do we change that? They worked on that segment and that segment only pretty much, increased it to 26%, pretty reliably for every concert. 26% of their first-time attendees would come back again within that same season. And they did a whole bunch of things to try to help move the needle on that statistic. And then a side benefit from all of this, not just the money that came from those retained buyers, but a side benefit, you heard me say they were not working on anything else besides first-time buyer retention. Well, who were our top prospects for subscribers? Multi-buyers. So by them succeeding in growing their multi-buyer cohort, their multi-buyer segment, they increased their total subscribers by 40%. And all of this is just to show, no matter the size of the organization, I said it before, I'll say it again, retention is like compound interest. That is my new analogy. It just keeps compounding. There's this ancillary benefit that when you work on one segment, it does have these other downstream, upstream effects on other segments. And anyway, so I just shared those 3 quick examples to answer the question. But like I said, I've got a lot more on my blog as well for anybody who's give me more case studies, they're there.
Brilliant. I think that's so valuable. Thank you so much, Aubrey. Oh, Jan, if you want to intervene very quickly, go ahead.
Yeah, just very fast. And now again, Aubrey and David segged into what I'm going to say. You couldn't know that. But we also see a lot also with some of our customers and just in the industry in general, that yes, it's spearheaded by a one-person band, so to speak. For instance, the head of marketing in an orchestra. And when it's not established by some kind of technology that anchors it, then when they leave, everything is dropped on the floor. It's actually rather drastic. Then first-time buyer retention maybe goes from a nice 30% down to 10 again immediately for the next concert. So it's very important that, and it doesn't matter how it can be systems or it can, of course you need buy-in, that's the classic. But if there's a system that makes it easy, so it's easy to hand over to your successor, then you actually have a big benefit. And I know, of course, when you move on, you don't have to care about it, but the organizations do have to care a lot about not losing that knowledge. It's like the classic CRM in sales-driven companies. Back in the day, I worked a lot on selling those systems back in the day. Salespeople didn't like putting data into CRM systems because then they thought they lost value. But luckily, we're not here. We're in performing arts, non-profit, so you don't lose value by making sure that when you leave, it still operates, it keeps running, it's easy for your new colleague to learn it. So yeah, I think that's a thing that is also, many are struggling with. It's a one-man band or woman band that drives this in the orgs and lose out on a lot when they leave. Then they take the whole knowledge to the next band.
That's absolutely a big pain that we hear very often out there. So now I can see the system doesn't allow me to shoot polls anymore. I'm very disappointed. So I'm gonna still use the last one, and whoever feels like can answer in the chat. Is a very quick question, and it's about customer journey. So is your customer's journey supported by data? You can say yes, no, or whatever you'd like. So I repeat the question and feel free to answer in the chat. Is your customer's journey supported by data? Yeah, it's over to you now, because you mentioned people struggling with manual data also and spreadsheets somehow. And we've often been told also that processing data is costly and time consuming. So I cannot personally keep the secret any longer. We have developed a dashboard, an audience retention dashboard for that. Jan, you're the magic man. Can you show us how to get started with analyzing data?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll share my screen. And again, as Aubrey says, you all have the data you need. That's the beauty of it. You could always get more data, but you have a lot to get started with. So let me, yes, am I sharing this screen now? Yep. And now I found a way to see you guys at the same time. That's nice. I start from where we end, just a little 8-minute demo here. So exactly the goals of the customer journey, those are the goals we have here. What do you want to focus on? Now we put it in what we call Viking English because we are from Denmark, half of us, Scandinavia. Get first timers to come back. It's not at all eloquent, but it's very practical. And that is the goal that Aubrey, you just mentioned. You had Flagstaff. They actually worked only on that, and it had amazing effects. So we have these goals, and they actually follow that journey. And there's a lot about donors because get them to do their first donation, get them to keep doing that, and maybe get them to donate more. And you could say that sounds very that's very business-like, but it's again, if you don't do it in the right way and with the right timing, then you don't get it. But if people will not send you $2,000 out of the blue, they will do it if you ask them at the right time, generally speaking. So that's what this system is all about, getting you assistance in running these different KPIs. So if we then go back to, I'll just zoom to the beginning of this. It all starts with the data, and I have done a little cookery show thingy here. So it looks like this when you join our dashboard. And what you really do, and I think we have some of our customers on here, and also there's some who have tried it earlier. So what you do is you drop your data here, and I have 3 massive files here with donors, subscribers, and ticket buyers, and it's just exports from standard systems. So I have not manipulated this or anything. And then you drop it, and you upload it, and now I won't wait. It takes a couple of minutes or 45 seconds. Then you have this, which is the metrics dashboard, and this is a model we have copied directly from Aubrey with her permission. So the cool thing about this it follows the customer journey. And of course, a customer journey in real life for one single person is not a linear thing. It jumps a little bit around, but statistically, it is this journey. Now I don't have to repeat it. Aubrey just said it very clearly. Single ticket buyers to multi-ticket buyers to subscribers to donors. So it's actually not. It's also actually good. Again, like Flagstaff, just accept that there are certain models out in the world. They are good to start with, and don't sweat the small stuff. And when you drop your data in our system, you get these segments, and you can also, I know one, Fort Collins, he was doing it himself. Jeremy, the Cuevas at Fort Collins, he was doing this by spreadsheet, massaging a lot of time. He learned a lot of smart models to do it in a faster and faster way. So of course it can be done, but it's just why spend hours when you can spend 45 seconds. So we try to so you can get to the fun stuff. We want our customers to do the strategic fun stuff instead of drowning in operations. That's the whole idea of this, to go to Aubrey's seminars and listen to David and then be able to implement it right away instead of having to, oh no, the data. So we have these segments, and I just want to show you a few examples. So for instance, first time buyers from upcoming events, those are super. Now, it's the Artelize Orchestra. Forgive their programming. They're not super innovative, but they are doing a Christmas oratorio here on the 2nd of December. But there are 140 newcomers. These are super critical to communicate very effectively and smartly with, and even make things in your venue. You have heard about that many times. Make sure this is a very, very welcoming experience. And again, you say, now I know there's 140. Here they are. They're all employees at Artelize in this case. And you can download them, and you can shoot an email to these guys. So, and if you drop addresses, we even had addresses if it's postcards you want to shoot or it's direct mail. So this is an example of a super simple action that all of a sudden takes 2 minutes instead of maybe hours, or maybe you never get it done because it's ending up in some cumbersome data work. Then I jump to the multi-ticket buyers. They are so interesting in so many ways. We have this that we call the new multi-ticket buyer journey. It lets you know, and can people read any of this? Maybe it's a little too tiny. So
Just
it lets you
maybe read it out loud, perhaps.
Yes, but what it allows you is to see. We use the Cotton Eye Joe logic here. Where did they come from? Where did they go? And it's, for instance, these guys who bought their second ticket for this Christmas oratorio. You can see the distribution among the first event. So this really is, if you are very analytical in your mindset, then this spawns ideas immediately to what to do, quite simply. Oh, so those who came for Beethoven and Saul in concert, and also more Beethoven, they're really likely to come for this Christmas oratorio. Let's write something for all those who didn't come, but have had this as their first event. And I come back to, we also help automate that, but you can also run your own ideas. And the season opener with Rhapsody in Blue was really not a thing that made people come back. So we should maybe think about that. Was it the experience? Was it the program itself? Wrong people coming, whatever it was. So there's a lot of what do you call it, flesh to the bone in just this little analysis here. And then again, as Aubrey talked about, we have the renewing subscribers. This orchestra is really, there's work to do, 35%, that's not so good. And then we have the first time donors, the renewing donors, and the major donors. And we made the major donor segment because although it's so obvious, you have to really make sure you don't lose a major donor. And you sometimes do, you cannot stop it from happening. But we also do see that sometimes the attention is lost a little bit with these, and it might just be 10 people, but you really have to, because maybe it's 5% that you can see here, 6% of your donations, and these are actually data anonymized from some customers, so it's not fake data. So 6% comes from Jennifer Cole. If Jennifer Cole falls in love with something else, then you actually lost 6% of your donations right off the bat. So having that segment and knowing who they are and being able to communicate smartly with them, that is also very important. Then we come back to the actions, because this was sort of if you want to drive it all yourself, and we can see that this already drives ideas. Some of our customers simply, I know what I want to do, click the button, I have the segment, now I want to do it. But we also developed an actions suggester, let's call it that. So if I go here to our retention rates, so for this orchestra again, it's actually having very nice first-time buyer retentions, but you can see it's nosediving, something needs to be done. These others are on the way up, it's going better. So the AI that we have built, and it's trained on a lot of data and all this, and is bespoke for this given customer based on all the patterns of multi-ticket buyers, etc. So I can click improve metric, and then I get suggestions for what to do. There it was. And that's the screen we started out with. And again, I'm zooming a little bit so you can see what it's all about. So now we're on the get first timers to come back. And here, I think I want to show this one, because as you can maybe see, I can also read it, uses customer journey patterns from new multi-ticket buyers. So it says this journey that I'm going to write to someone about is already happening. So it uses the buying patterns of existing people. And again, we have made it's made in a way where you don't have to understand why. That's actually not so important. Why are people who went to this concert already buying Bach's Christmas oratorio tickets? But the interesting thing is they are doing it. So why not double down on all the rest? Because they're more likely to be a multi-ticket buyer from this event. Why not double down on these people here? And you can even merge these data in your email or your postcard or whatever. Why not double down on them by generating some nice emails? And we also made a model that are able, it's like ChatGPT, but it uses all the data we have about your events already, because our system actually already gathers all your events. We have AI, so we already know for any given of you here, I believe we already have you on our platform with all the events. So therefore we know about the programming, about what happened, and we can write, this is maybe a little too long, but it also asks for feedback. It says what's in it for you, and all those things that is good practice to do. Also, like Aubrey has been talking a lot about, how to do copy, and it's always a starting point, an inspirator. It's not like copy paste send. It's always a starting point, and you have your own style, but it also learns from what you like and what you accept over time, so it gets better and better, and you can speed it up also over time. And it also has social media posts. Just wanted to show you. So here are some social media things. Twitter, we are maybe removing that, sorry. But the Instagram stories and Facebook live sessions, etc. And some of these ideas where you say, whoa, okay, make a I just saw an idea yesterday. Make a Baroque music escape room challenge. Okay, maybe a little over the top. Maybe it could be fun. I don't know, but it has suggestions from the very light end to sort of bigger things. And what you do, you just say, this one I'm going to do. So let's do that. This one, yeah, I like that. This one, no, we are just going to remove that. And this one we're not doing either. Not this one either. And you can create your own activities, you know. So I'm also going to a venue activity, etc. And then comes the fun when you're done, because then you can see it in your retention metrics, how it is working. Then you will see, like Flagstaff Symphony, that this nosedive stops happening and it goes upwards because you're doing something targeted on this. And that's what our system is built for, to sort of in 5 minutes get to action, instead of having all those data troubles that are always a little tricky. And you could say we guarantee that the data will work in our system, because without them you can't get anywhere. So that's how it works. I think that's a plentiful demo. There are many more corners of this, but I think that's enough, isn't it, Paula?
If I may add, maybe it's also the community thought that I had about the audience growth hacking. This is, of course, growth hacking in action. But my idea here would be that, again, with best practices, the best experiments here, that we actually look at the data, how are they working? And then we ask the arts organization, simply, would you like to share this with the community? And then all you have to do, not go to a conference and share it, not fly out to a different city, just say yes. And then everybody else will be able to see the content of that experiment, not sharing any personal information, not being in breach with any GDPR data laws, but just sharing the best practices of an experiment that worked and had this effect on your audience. That's my idea about the audience growth hacking community.
And I would like to ask Aubrey and David to also give their feedback on what they just have seen.
Yeah, I think, I've been in this business almost 20 years now, and I've worked with a lot of different CRMs at this point. And no matter the CRM you're on, some are certainly more robust than others, but no matter the CRM you're on, it has always been my experience and my team's experience that pulling all of this information is not always the easiest or the fastest. And therefore, that's a big barrier to doing this retention work. So I was so excited when Artelize first started working on a solution to this very real, specific problem and challenge of our industry. And then to see all of these segments in one place, to my knowledge, that did not exist until now, no matter what CRM I've worked with over the years. And I've worked with hundreds of organizations on this stuff at this point. So again, just really meeting a need. And then the other thing I just wanted to kind of reflect is that a bonus benefit in my mind, you guys can tell me in the chat if this resonates, but like raise your hand or put a 1 in the chat if you have ever spent like endless hours preparing board slide decks, board reports, board dashboards, pulling the data for that. I see people starting to say, yeah. And like being able to say, like, I get this question all the time, Aubrey, how do I focus my board's attention on this retention work? How do I get my board members to buy in? What are the top KPIs we need to be reporting out on? And I feel like no matter where I go, these are like board-like questions that get asked. And for an organization I was running, this is what I would do. I would be like, click, there's my board report. Thank you. Like it just, anyways, ancillary benefit, but I think it's a big one in terms of getting our boards focused on this work as well. Yeah, Christine says so true. Yeah.
I just second everything Aubrey just said. One thing for me that stands out is if you're an organization who works with multiple venues with totally different box office software, like the ability to pull that together has always been an absolute nightmare, especially for things like board reports, but even for your own usage. So the idea that you could actually export all that data from your different venues, all these different box office software, and have somewhere where you can visualize this, I think is particularly unique as well.
Absolutely. Yes. But then I think, it's really important. Thank you, first of all, Ian, for this demo. And I would say to our attendees, if you're ready to explore the Artelize dashboard and how it can help your arts organization, we invite you to book a personalized demo. You're going to find the meeting link in the chat. And so you can assess by yourself if this is a good match. And if you wish to subscribe right away because you feel ready to go, you'll also find the subscription link in the chat. And since we truly believe that audience retention is a priority, especially at this time of already started season, so the earlier you start, the better. But we're offering a 2-month discount on annual subscription, so it's really the perfect moment to dive in for this. But let me thank you so much, our amazing speakers. Aubrey, thank you so much. David, Soon, and Yan. This was so valuable, I believe. And thank you so much for your expertise, your contributions. And let me thank you all our attendees. You stayed almost till the end. That's amazing. We're very happy. And we hope this session was valuable to you. Still, please take a moment to answer the survey we have at the end of the webinar. It takes like 1 second, I promise. And to let us know if this was valuable to you, because we want to, it matters what you think and we want to get better. So thank you again, everyone. And let's keep that audience coming back, really. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.